have a quote that I think will resonate with you because you and I have talked often about the power of sort of being underestimated.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And the quote is, everybody likes a kidder, but nobody lends him money.
Yeah. I think that's similar vein.
Yeah, this is more, there are people you like in your life to be around, and there are people you like in your life to work with. And those are not the same. Usually, often, it's great when those are the same people, but usually they are not.
And I think it's more that it's about being serious. And it's about, you know, authenticity and seriousness. And when you're a kidder, maybe a lot of times people don't take you serious. And you and I would classify as kidders. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I wouldn't balk at that.
Yeah. We give people a bad time and stuff like that. And it does more than anything, at times I think people lock you into a framework. And
You get pigeonholed.
I've got
Sure.
yeah, and I've gotten the comment many times at work and in my personal life when things get serious. People are like, I have not seen that side of you before.
Well, you are a person that I've worked with, that I've known, that has one of the biggest deltas I've ever seen, in that you're very laid back, very jokey, 95, 97% of the time. But when there's a difference between Mashi and Mosh. When Mosh comes out, oh, it's spicy. Oh boy, let's go. All right. And
Yeah,
usually it's in a convention center, in my experience.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Oh, it's been in a few boardrooms. It's
I'm
been
sure, yeah, that's fair.
There was a famous moment where I was in a meeting with John, and a comment was made that was basically like, you know, in a very polite way, just the person that was leading the negotiation on their side just basically said that, John, you're a liar. He didn't say it in those words.
This. Yeah.
And I was in I know what meeting he was referencing. The person, I believe, who made the comment made some commitments verbally that he never should have done. And it was coming back on him. And I get it. But that was not, and I don't, then we started going in on it. And the next thing I know, I remember feeling John's arm on my shoulder, just saying, okay, we need a bathroom break. We get down there and he's like, you got it. He's like, pull back. I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. He's like, no, it is.
But it's shocking for people though. And I'm the same way with you. I find it, being jokey and being a kidder makes it easier to get through the vast majority of life, personal life and professional life, to be honest. It's just a nice lubricant to sort of get through social interactions. But it makes it hard when you need people to take you seriously. And I think people like you and I end up overcorrecting a little bit as a result, which is what makes people be like, whoa, that is not the Dennis I'm used to. Oh boy.
I haven't, I think it depends on the levels. The people that I'm quite close to, that I spend a lot of time with, even those who've never maybe seen that side of me in a business side or a personal side, at a certain point, they're like, oh, okay. You know, he's serious. There's something under there. And I think people feel the same way about you once they get to know you. And so this is the difference between being underestimated and being properly estimated in a lot of ways. Being underestimated is the idea that there is some steel beneath the velvet in this case, right? There is something there. It's just not always apparent. You know, I think that there's a lot to be said for how you present yourself, and for really understanding the value of things like humility, and for really understanding the value of things about forgiveness, acceptance, and kindness. Being forgiving, accepting, kind, and humble. None of that is really genuine if you don't have a choice. It's forced on you. If you don't have the power and the wherewithal and the strength of character or strength of personality to act in a different way, then you aren't restraining yourself. You aren't acting in a humble way. You aren't being kind or accepting. You're being a punching bag and you're just accepting everything that's happening to you. There's a difference.
Those times when you need to be, or you decide to be that harder version of yourself, they buy you the runway to live life easier the rest of the time, right?
And you need to have a hardness, and you don't need to be a kidder. You can just be that way at all times. Sure. But if you aren't restraining yourself in some way, if you aren't accepting certain situations and saying, this doesn't matter. For instance, like if I'm out with my loved ones and friends, this has happened many times at bars. You can say or do whatever you want to me. I don't give a shit. I don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't want is anyone touching me. I don't like to be touched by, like, and I don't want anyone approaching people I care about. There's where I draw the line. Don't say anything about them, and I think that it's okay to be accepting of a lot of things. And indeed, I think you should be. And in fact, I feel I'm overprotective. I need to, that's one thing I need to work on. Like I get very defensive. I've been out at times and things have been said and, there's just like, wait, what? It's like, no, dude, what are you upset about? You're like, okay, sorry. I just got a little mad there. But I think that you're not really restraining yourself. If that's the way you live life. You're not really finding center and peace and drawing yourself in to be humble and kind. If you have no choice, if that's how you have to live life, right? What I also think is important for me personally, because I have vices, is to not be overtly controlling, to not be overtly manipulative or manipulative in any way, overtly or covertly. Because the other thing about being a friendly, charismatic person is you can do those things. You can control people without, if you want to, you can kind of like nudge them in this direction or that direction without them knowing it, if you're good at it. And live life that way. And in fact, as much as I love my father, that's very much what he did. That's very much how he lived life. And in fact, towards the end of his life, we had a very candid conversation where he's like, I just assumed you would do these things because that's how I live life. And I was like, well, I don't want to live life like that, Dad.
Nikki often gets frustrated with me because I'll do that. Even if it's something like trivial, like let's say we're in a group setting, we're deciding where to go for dinner. I'm good at kind of steering the group narrative towards what I want. And that's just always been the way I've lived my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she gets frustrated sometimes. She's like, well, because she feels like that gives me more responsibility to like look out for people I care about and stuff and like look after their needs because I have the ability to do that. But I'm like your father in that sense. I'm like, doesn't everybody just do that? What are you talking about? I don't understand. And it turns out the answer is no.
No.
But that is not my experience. It's very difficult for me to imagine it any other way.
I think that you should find a way to, it's a good tool to have. It's a good arrow to have in the quiver. And of course, it can be used for magnanimous and beneficial purposes. But I think that doing that at all. And so like one of the things that I like to do a lot in situations like that, and I do this all the time in my personal life, my professional life, I'll say something like, well, I want to go to Nando's. Mm-hmm. So I'm
that's my stake. Yeah.
I'm going to be part of this conversation, but straight up cards on the table, I want to go to Nando's. And then I will do everything I can to nudge everyone towards Nando's. But you're
being open about it better, right? You're being overhanded, not underhanded. Something that frustrates me to no end, and this is not something Nikki does. I want to make that clear because based on how I said this earlier, it's going to sound like it is, but it's not at all. Is people who say, oh, "I don't really care what we do." Not that though. That drives me crazy.
That's what I say this all the time. It doesn't matter. You cannot know what you want to do, but you lose your veto power. You could say, I don't know. Or, and I've been guilty of this. I say, you know what, y'all, I'm in that mood. I don't know what I want to do, but I know what I don't want to do.
And that's okay. That's an opinion too.
You cop to it, right? But I think going back to this idea.
A reference you'll appreciate before we get too far off is my friend group, and I call that F6ing, by the way. And we can leave it there.
That's good. That's really good. I think that the idea that, and again, this wraps into this idea of like, to have kind of, I think, self-mastery and control of yourself, which I think is important, which doesn't mean you're overtly shutting things down, but it's knowing yourself, knowing what proclivities you have, what vices you have. And I bring up this idea of manipulation stuff because I started my career in law as as an attorney in a large firm,
a professional manipulator.
And I'll be honest with you, I graduated law school at one of the worst times, and then I ended up getting laid off, as did almost everyone in my class. It was a crushing blow, but it was a very humbling blow, and I do think I needed that. One of the things I reflect on and I hope I'm not gilding the lily here, is I say that it was a good thing, because I think that life would have been a very bad life for me. It would have fed too many vices in me without giving me enough time and maturity. I was in my mid-20s to really understand how to deal with that situation, and I think it would have made me a very, very bad person. I think it would have been a very successful, in that world person, but not a person I would like today. And so I think that when we look at who we are, I think we also have to look at who we could be in both a good and bad sense, and understand, what are we restraining? how are we living with that? And restraining things isn't locking them in a box and shuffling them in the bottom. It's embracing them, and kind of, rather than being an oak against those winds that buffet us internally, being the willow that blows with them and understands what direction we're going in. What that all comes back down to is a kidder and lending them money. You want to be serious enough, I think, behind it all, so that people can take you seriously when they need to. And that's different. Like if you're always a kidder, and there's people in my life who are all kidders, and be like, whoa, so-and-so's a doctor. I did not even see that side of them. I did what? And so I think that, that there is that persona. And I think you and I lead lives at a casual level where people have that persona. At a more personal level, I think there is, you learn a lot about yourself. Like I've learned now that I'm very goal oriented. I've learned now that I do like to be in control of a lot of things. And I've learned now that, I'll take care of things. It's one of the things I actually have a lot of confidence in myself. I was like, if things, and I learned this at events, if the shit hits the fan, and it's not even like I'm like, oh, don't worry, you guys, I'll take care of it. I'll just be like, okay, we're going to do this. And yeah, you know what? I'm very comfortable running 5 miles in the wrong direction and then going, I thought we had to do something. I thought this was it. This wasn't it.
This is not it. Yeah.
Now. But I don't like to stand around and watch it unfold around me.
You want to be an active participant. I understand that. What's interesting to me, and something I've struggled with a lot, is if the delta between the version of yourself that you feel and the version of yourself that you present it's not even necessarily if the delta is too big. It's more if the delta is big enough for too long, it gets very easy to lose sight of what's underneath. If you play the part of the kidder in this case for too long, eventually you start to believe that story yourself. And then it gets very difficult to scrape it away and see what's underneath, because you've masked it, not just from the other people around you, but from you yourself as well. And that's something I've struggled with in the past too. And this disconnect between, well, what are my actual emotions and what am I just saying my emotions are? That's tricky too. So I think it's important to try and center yourself, and be it through journaling or meditating or playing video games or going for a run or whatever, try and quiet down the upper parts of your mind and anchor yourself a little bit.
I think the real key to it all, when we get down to it, by the way, there's a great Doctor Who quote by the fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, the greatest doctor of all time, where he says, there's no point in being grown up if you can't be childish. Is when we talk about the kidder, and when we talk about, and we've talked about this with game playing and the inner child, when we talk about that jovial, fun-loving side of us, it must be genuine. Don't make it a mask. Make it your inner child. Make it the things you love. Make it the jokes you have. Make it for me, I have a job where I get to appeal back, for instance, to 80s wrestling, which I grew up watching and loving. And so when I have childlike euphoria at Single Hulk Hogan Auto, that's real. I love the Hulkster. He's not a great person. I mean, not a bad person. He's a human, right? And we get to see a lot of his dirty laundry. But I think it's important that when we talk about kidders, be genuine. Tell the jokes that make you laugh, not the jokes that you think your audience wants to hear. Yes. Even if you're the only one laughing, sing those stupid songs that are stuck in your head, even if they're 80s songs that nobody in the room is going to get. Be genuine, because if you don't do that, you will fall into what you're talking about, Dennis. Then it's just a mask. Then you're acting
yourself. Yeah.
Then you're just playing a part for your audience. That is dangerous. And that's what being in law was going to do for me. And in fact, that's how I led my life for, fucking 20 years. Okay. That is dangerous. Therein lies madness. That is you staring into the abyss and the abyss staring back into you. It's all those things that you don't want to do because you think you're playing a part. And then all of a sudden you lose the threads of where the part ends and the real you is. No matter how centered you think you are, no matter how much you're meditating, you do that. And trust me, you can do all that, get finished, stand up, and step right back into the role you were playing.